What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Emporium's TV review of Dopesick Season 1, Episode 5, which of course is called The Whistleblower. This episode, of course, is directed by Patricia Riggen. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like any of these videos, awesome, hit that like button, as well as comment below any video to watch, including this one. And so this episode is considered and called The Whistleblower, as the title suggests, but this episode to me is called The Reckoning, for the simple fact that we have Fennix and Betsy who have gotten to the lowest of low point that they can get, and we also have Richard who's rising in the ranks. We also have Bridgett and Rick and Ronnie stuff, but we'll, like I always do, we'll discuss each character in their own perspective segment, and then we'll go from there and so on and so forth. So I want to talk about the Bridgett stuff first because it's the shortest amount of stuff. Bridgett, of course, is a very forceful woman. Rosario Dawson does a really nice job in this episode, in this series, and she is basically, I want to say, hamstrung by her forcefulness. She's at least in this episode, she's constantly confronted by her own boss, by her subordinates, for being too forceful. They're getting ready to have a conference of sorts with, the news media and what their intentions are. And the two individuals that are talking to Bridgett want her basically to step aside, allow one of the subordinates, who is a white individual, believe it or not, named Simmons, who is going to go up there because he's nice. He's not what he should be doing. He's nice, and that's not how it should be working. If you are the DEA and you are in the middle of confronting a epidemic, you don't want to be nice about it. You want to be forceful, but they want to go on a persona with niceness and stuff like that. And she's talked to her boss about how she's just too strong-willed and too forceful, and it's just really infuriating to see that this epidemic gets worse and worse and worse, and they're worried about looks and appeal because of the media and so on and so forth. And in the process, when they're of course in the conference with the media, they ask Simmons about if they're going to focus more on Purdue, and he says no, and you see kind of the face of Bridgett's character. And there's also a point where the Purdue reps, as well as Richard Seckler, are going to talk to this group of the DEA. They're going to kind of come to terms about how they can curb the situation. But Bridgett, who was told to stay back, is like, screw that. She goes and she confronts Richard Seckler and his of course, is lawyers and stuff like that. And they give this spiel about how they're going to put pamphlets out, blah, blah, blah. The nonsense they're trying to, spiel so they can sell more Oxy. And Bridgett's like, I'm not stopping. You guys can do something about this, but I'm going to break the FDA. I'm going to break whoever I need to break to make sure this problem is curbed. And Richard Seckler just kind of stares at her for a second, almost like he's laughing in her face, like he realizes that he is one step ahead. And the way they two look at each other is kind of interesting and kind of fun to watch, because it's like a good David versus Goliath type situation where Bridget's the David, and of course Goliath is the Richard Seckler character. And at the end of this whole segment with Bridgett, with this, particular area, her boss is like, really kind of like, it was kind of a surprise where he's like, do what you need to do. They were lying to us. Do what you need to do. And what makes her kind of character arc kind of sad in this episode is she goes to talk to her husband, and her husband explains about a boss that he has whose father, father is having really bad pain, and they need to prescribe Oxycontin. And what's really sad is he's so selfish in this type, where she's like, I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to help kids not become addicted. And what does he do? He's like, you're selfish. You never asked what I thought about it. It's like, I'm sorry, but, I'm sorry that this guy has pain, but it's causing people to die. And she just kind of, I don't know if she kind of just sweeps it aside. She's like, I'm sorry. But I feel like she's like caught between two particular concepts of, she's trying to do her job, but people are kind of in her way, like as roadblocks, and her husband is a roadblock. And I think this is pretty much why they started kind of falling apart, and then they eventually, of course, divorce and stuff like that. But that's pretty much all of Bridgett's stuff. It's just, she is pushing what Rick and Ronnie will end up doing with the whistleblower and stuff like that, which is really interesting. But she has some really impactful moments that affect this episode in some really interesting ways. How the story plays out, I don't know, but it was very interesting to watch. And so the Bridgett stuff parallels the Rick and Ronnie stuff, where it's a different actually time frame, different years or whatever. But Rick and Ronnie have finally cataloged everything. Rick is kind of losing his nerve because he's been constantly at work. His wife, says their kids are questioning why he's never at home, that kind of stuff. We can tell this is starting to get at him and whatnot. Ronnie and this tech has been cataloging everything. Basically, they're able to put in keywords to figure out, if they need some kind of information. And so they put in keywords about drug abuse, the calls that the reps have been putting in, call logs or whatever. And they find like this major list of like drug abuse from the Oxycontin. And then he's like putting crushed and snorted, and it's an even longer list that these call logs have been putting in. But after they find the database, after they find the information, they actually start contacting the reps of the call logs of Purdue, the people that sell the drug to the doctors and whatnot. And what ends up happening is either people won't answer, people give a little bit of information, or they lie about it, and they hang up. So they're not getting anywhere with any of these leads. But Ronnie finally gets a hold of Paula, who of course was, fired unceremoniously in the last episode. And she starts talking to him about some of the stuff that she's seen. Ronnie wants her to testify against the grand jury, with the grand jury. Of course, it'll be sealed, so she won't be implicated in the process. And what's crazy is she refuses to do it because she's under an NDA that she signed so she can have, not have to worry about harassment, which is a very big thing in this episode. That is crazy. That is crazy to me to think that because Purdue is so powerful and so big that they're willing to sweep the stuff under the rug, willing to NDA and give her money to stay quiet. And of course, she doesn't want to testify, which is understandable if you're under an NDA because you get sued and all that stuff. Well, this leads into the major part of Rick and Ronnie's story where there's this woman, I think her name's Scarlett or something like that, Scarlett. She is a mother who lost her daughter who had a son to Oxycontin. So she starts to investigate. She sets up a website. She becomes that individual that puts out all this information out, and nobody will talk to her. The FBI, the Purdue, nobody will talk to her. But she eventually gets a call from Rick's character, who finds her website after doing some research. Basically, we find out that she had bought all this stuff, these Purdue Oxycontin toys and bears and stuff like that, the stuff that they would give out for free to kind of promote the drug or whatnot. But this leads down the road, which is going to connect to the Richard Sackler stuff later on. This leads down to the road where we learn about a character named Maureen, who was the secretary of Howard Udall. And basically, she sent out an email after doing some investigative work about the drug abuse and stuff like that. There had been some questions put out that Howard Udall kind of wanted to have, looked up and whatnot. And she starts to freak out because she realizes that there's something really wrong. So she sends an email to the higher ups, the people that run the company, like Richard Sackler and Katie Sackler and stuff like that. She gets fired for not only that, but she gets fired because she was in an accident. Howard Udall gave her Oxycontin. She became addicted, and then she was fired for that as well. It leads her to Ronnie and Rick's character, or to them talking, and they somehow convince her to testify in a grand jury that they promise she will not be, known as being the one that testified. And it leads down a really sad road because her stress has gotten to a point where she needs Oxycontin again because of her pain has come back. She ends up in the hospital, and Rick and Ronnie realize they can't use her because she is not only under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure, but she is now in a state where she can't do this kind of stuff. And it's really depressing. This whole episode is depressing and sad and just heartbreaking because there's a lot of moving pieces that are starting to fall into place, and people are starting to get to a situation where they're going to have to be in a different direction, and we see how Michael Keaton's character gets to the point he does. But at the very end of their segment, they talk about how their religious morals, why they become religious and stuff like that. Ronnie's definitely not religious, and it's a really kind of I want to say poetic and sad moment because you sit there and you listen to them talk, and they almost feel defeat. They almost feel like they've been kind of put through the ringer, and they've almost gotten to a point where it's just everything is ended, and it's really sad, it's really depressing, and it really shows that what these guys have to do and go through to prove how menacing a company like Purdue is it's just crazy. It really is. It's sad to see, and it was really depressing to watch. And it really shows you that these actors are doing a really nice job under the writing of Danny Strong's ability and the direction and stuff like that. So it was really kind of crazy to watch, and that's half the episode. We're not even into the Richard Steckler stuff or the Betsy and Fennix characters, but we'll talk about the Richard Steckler stuff now. Richard is on the rise as somebody who's made a lot of money for this company. He says how in 3 years it'll be $1 billion drug because of the addiction and all that. He knows what's going on. He's not stupid. And they're going out to 160 milligram Oxycontin pill. But this leads into some very, I want to say, Succession-like content where Richard basically wants, because he knows he's the smart one, he wants to become president of the company. But his uncle, who is a very angry individual, refuses to give him that power. And so Richard confides with his cousin about taking over the company. Well, before all that happens, we of course have the Germany stuff, which falls apart. He's trying to get with his uncle to, confide in him, kind of, break bread and stuff like that. And his uncle's like, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. And Richard and his cousin basically conspire to go for the throat, go for everything, and make a vote basically between A and B shares, which is the head of the companies. And so they're eating dinner, and I can't remember who it is, but one of the guys goes, we're going to do a vote, and we're going to do a vote for the B shares, which is Richard Steckler's side, and then we're going to do a vote of the A shares, which is his cousin and his uncle's side, and they're going to decide whether Richard should be the president. So they make a vote. All the B side, of course, vote for Richard, and then we get to the A side, and of course his cousin and a couple other people vote, making the majority rule. Therefore, Richard becomes president. The uncle is ousted out, and it basically becomes a villainous situation where he is now control of the company. He goes and buys a building for $84 million. And this is going to get worse before it even gets better. And we're only 3 episodes away from the conclusion, but it's going to be interesting to see Richard Steckler and Purdue, which I still think is a pharmaceutical company even to this day. It's really crazy, really insane that Richard is able to get away with what he is. But when you have that kind of power, when you have the FDA behind you and stuff like that, it really shows you that all you need is money and you will succeed. And he gives shares and money and he splits it all around and stuff like that. So, but this finally leads into the most depressing stuff, the saddest stuff in the world. We'll go with, of course, Fennix's character first. Fennix is an individual who has gone on a downward spiral. Ever since he was in an accident, he is now an absolute addict of the drug Oxycontin. He's been going to different states, getting prescriptions for pills and whatnot. Been splitting it between the old man that we see throughout the series. That's always been, he's been helping. And we see a guy who literally is to the point where he could severely hurt someone if he keeps going the way he's going, or die in the process, which is where he's going towards. And he basically, it leads him to his office. He is there to do a surgery. Of course, his nurse is curious about what is going on with him because he's sweating, he's acting all like weird and out of place. And he's in his office and she's like, we're here, we're ready to do the surgery. And he goes in there and of course he's sweating really profusely. And the guy, there's supposed to be like a 1 millimeter incision to take out something. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this guy, but basically Fennix's character cuts a pretty big gash in this guy's leg, which causes the blood to like squirt out. Really depressing, really disturbing stuff. Leads to the hospital, and basically what happens is the guy survives, the one he like severely injured, and he asks the doctor, because he says he has back pain, for a prescription. So the doctor is going to give him 10 milligrams of Oxycontin, blah, blah, blah. And Fennix goes, oh, I usually give my patients, 20, whatnot. The suspicion nature comes into effect. And that's when the doctor's like, I wonder what's going on here. I'm curious. He knows that this guy there's something wrong. And the nurse of Fennix and, of course, the sheriff walks in, and the sheriff has his bag of pills, the bag of Oxy. And that's when the doctor talks to the sheriff, and that's, of course, when we see his character arrested and basically sent to a rehabilitation clinic. Well, that leads to Billy, who is now very, very, I would say, regretful of what he does. I don't have any sympathy for him, but he basically yelled at by Amber's character, told that he needs to basically grab his balls and move forward and make money. But he visits Fennix's character in the rehab center, and what's crazy about it is Fennix talks to him. He basically confesses. He says, "What I told you was a lie. I'm sorry. I just was making money. It was good money." He's a young kid, whatever. I don't feel sorry for him because he did something stupid, but maybe he'll redeem himself by testifying. And Fennix basically stops him and is like, "This is not why I called you here. I called you here because I need some pills." Wow. That was insanely depressing. The look on Billy's face was probably everybody's look when they see what exactly is going on with Fennix. But how Fennix gets from here to when he's testifying is going to be crazy to see. Like, Fennix is just to a point where he just can't help himself. He is a guy that's literally going to be in this retirement or this rehabilitation center the rest of his life because he just can't handle it, or he's going to go to jail. Something's going to happen, but it's not good. And I think Michael Keaton's playing the performance to perfection. I think William Poulter does a really nice job too. But to watch this character go from like the doctor that was, the town's beloved doctor, to losing his license in a year and a half or whatever it's been since the series started is really crazy. It's really insane. And I really sad. This series is crazy in its own right, and we haven't even got to the Betsy stuff, and I'll kind of be a little quick on that. But she is full-blown addict again. She's basically getting her pills from AA meetings from that woman. In the process, she's stealing the jewelry from her mother to sell to the pawn shop, which leads to a very disturbing sequence with the pawn shop offering more money for certain favors, which she accepts. And we see this woman, Betsy, just at her wit's end, just at her basically lowest point that she probably will get in this entire series. But basically, the mom finds the jewelry missing. The father confronts Betsy. Betsy refuses to acknowledge, but she's like, "I needed it to say I sold it to the pawn shop." Betsy's father gets mad at her, obviously, like he should. He dumps the pills down. She burns something, and then they commit her to a clinic or a Baker Actor or whatever they do. And she's freaking out. She's having withdrawals. She's like screaming and yelling. Parents try to get the jewelry back, but of course the pawn shop owner is a scumbag and he won't do it. And he's there to make money or whatever. And it basically, at this point, we're going to see one of two things happen. Either Betsy's going to get clean, she's either going to relapse again, or she's going to die. One of those three things, and it's going to be really interesting to see. But that's why I call this episode The Reckoning, because it reckons with everything that has happened before it, the cause and causality and stuff like that, the idea of how the things we do affect the things later on, and we're starting to see the payoff of everything that's happening, for better or worse, in the long run. So it's a really hard episode to watch. It really was. It wasn't easy at all to sit there and go, okay, here's notes on what happens to Rick, Ronnie, and Richard, and Betsy and Fennix. I was like, oh, man, this is one of those episodes that really makes it tough. And it has its moments. Sometimes it has its moments where it takes it to some depths that you don't want to watch, but it needs to be seen because it's a really important episode on how the effects of one company and their sliminess and scheminess affects the entire nation. It really did. And man, this episode was rough. It was well directed, well acted. Everybody's great in it, but it's one of the tougher episodes in the series, and I feel so bad for. Well, I mean, in essence, you feel so bad for Fennix and Betsy. That this is not who they were, or what they were, and they're kind of paying the price for rich man's life, I guess you could say. So, but if I were to give this a score, I'd probably give it another 9 out of 10 because it is a fantastic episode, but it has some really dark, deep moments that you have to sit through and kind of realize that this is how things are. So, Anyways, that'll do it. That'll be my discussion / review of this episode, which is of course called The Whistleblower. Comments below, as always. What did you think of this episode? What did you think of the progression of these characters? What is your overall feeling on how this series is going to go? We know there's some kind of finality and conclusion because we probably read about it and stuff like that. But anyways, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next. If you like any of the videos, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.